Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson, and this is the 188th episode of this show. Yay! I'm so happy. Thank you for being part of the community and part of the program. Today, we have a show that is one of the Help Situation Spotlight series. And the Help Situation Spotlight series is exactly what it sounds like. You, community members, share with me concerns, issues, fears, and ask me help. You give me a situation that you want to shine the spotlight on for us to discuss in a show, and that's exactly what we do. What is the show topic today that we have shown our spotlight on? It is, why doesn't my experience mean more than credentials, degree, license, etc.? Why doesn't my experience mean more than credentials, degree, license, etc.? So here we are. Episode 188. This, of course, is a show that is on our CourtneyAnderson.com, which is our central website. So CourtneyAnderson.com site, we have a whole page dedicated just to this program. I encourage you to come by CourtneyAnderson.com to our show page, where I'll have links to anything that I mention or discuss. I will also post any updates that I might need to add to our show program. Please, wherever you are locating our program, leave a rating or review on iTunes or Stitcher or Libsyn or Spreaker or whatever it is that you're finding our program around the world, and share the show on your social media. I know you're social. And if there's something that you see on our show site page or anywhere else on CourtneyAnderson.com, of course, we have our blog where we've got all of these programs. We have the companion show to this, which is the video program. It's sort of our companion television video podcast. Please access those. I also have articles. You will see show sponsor opportunities throughout the website. Those are ads or links that I have to products and services that I strongly encourage you to check out. Click on those links and make those purchases with our show sponsors. It's one of the ways that we're able to get to 188 episodes of the show and to continue to add this program, which is our talk show, radio, audio podcasts, the companion, which is the TV show program, the blogs, the seminars, the courses, so support our show sponsors. This show is one that in the interest of full disclosure, I'll often talk about an episode and I'll share like, oh, this really, I get this, or this is something I've struggled with, or this is something that, I'm so glad that it was suggested for a program, because it's definitely something that's been on my mind. And then there are other times when I'll share when we're discussing a topic and I'll say, well, this is something that I might not have a lot of, individual experience with, or it might not be something that I ever even thought of. That's where we are with this program. So this program is asking, why doesn't my experience mean more than credentials, degree, license, etc.? And I really have never understood this question. And actually it was, I had a discussion with someone a while ago, and they were asking and talking about potentially going back to school. And we started to discuss exactly this topic, right? And they were saying something along the lines of, hey, look, I have experience. I have years of experience. I really know what I'm doing. And I don't know why, I'm forced to play this game, where if you don't have the credential, right? If I don't have the license or the certification or the degree or whatever, then my experience is just, it's not even, valid. No one even seems to care. I know more about this job than people that manage me. They hire people to manage me, and because they have licenses or certification or credentials or degrees or whatever, and those people don't even know what I know. I know more than they do. And they hire them to supervise me, and they give them more money than I do, and I'm angry. This is all about credential inflation. It's a stupid game where if you go and you get a credential, then you're paid more money, and you have the ability to tell me what to do, and you don't even know what you're doing. You don't even have any experience. I have experience. I know what I'm doing. I'm really good at what I do. And so it was it was an interesting discussion, and I was thinking through it, and my immediate response to the question, right? And the question is, of course, why doesn't my experience mean more than credentials? And my immediate response is, how does anybody know what your experience is? And what I mean by that is simply this. Look, the whole reason that the credentials and the license and the degrees exist is to try to have some way for us to verify. What do I mean by us? You and I and everybody else. When we go out into the world, we meet strangers, right? I met a stranger, and they were at a business that has a sign on it that says they're a dentist. And then they had a name tag on that said their name and dentist. Or they said it was their name. I don't even know that. How do I know those people are really dentists? How do I know that they know anything about my teeth before I open up my mouth and let them, who knows? Maybe they'll clean my teeth, and my teeth will be the best condition they've ever been in, or maybe they'll go in there and there's some sort of person who goes around and pulls people's teeth just to be cruel, to abuse people and to hurt them. Maybe there's some sort of a person who's an abuser, and they're not even a dentist at all. How do I know? How do I know if the plumber that I called that comes over to fix my plumbing has any knowledge of being about plumbing? How do I know this? How do I know when I get on an airplane that the person who's sitting at the front claiming that they're going to be the pilot, how do I know that person's ever flown a plane? How do I know they even know what to do? How do I know this stuff? And so, from my worldview, the credentials and the licenses and the degrees and everything are there so that we can have a life that functions. And the reality is, with over 7 billion people on the planet, I don't know everybody, and neither do you. There's absolutely not a way that I'm aware of that even somebody with the greatest memory is going to be able to go around and meet all 7 billion plus people, and the constantly new people that are being born, meet them, and remember all the different things that they've done in terms of experience, so that I can meet them and say, oh yeah, that's Jose Brown. I met Jose Brown before, and I know that Jose Brown has got all this experience because I personally know Jose Brown, so I totally trust that that's the person that I want as my pilot on my airplane. I mean, we don't have that. So absent me having some kind of way to know all these individuals that I'm going to encounter in life and to know whether or not they know what they're doing, then you have to have some sort of independent system or somebody else, not me, because I have other stuff to do. I can't go around and verify every single person that I meet. Are you a dentist? Let me confirm that. Are you a veterinarian? Are you a pilot? Are you a chef? Are you a licensed nail technician? Do you know what you're doing? Are you a licensed barber? I can't go around doing all this and verifying individually every time I meet somebody or I'm out trying to, buy something or use a service. I can't do all of this. I have a life. And even if I just devoted my life to this, how would I even know what the requirements are for all of these different skills? Especially skills I myself don't know how to do. How do I know how many, hours or what kind of training you need to sufficiently, fly a wide body jet? How do I know how much expertise is needed, to be an efficient electrician? I don't know. I don't do those things. I wouldn't even know what it is to ask to try to find out if somebody, knows enough. I go to get my car repaired. How do I know the people at the car repair shop know anything about car repairs? Or they're just opening up the hood and just banging on stuff to make noise. Bang, bang, I made noise, pay me $200. And they didn't even touch anything, to fix anything. How do I know? And because these aren't areas that I'm even trained in myself, I don't even know what to ask. So in my mind, one of the reasons I said that I find this question interesting, and yet I don't really personally relate to it, is how would anybody have any objective way of knowing what your experience is other than you saying, trust me? That's the only way. So if we open up the system where, okay, everybody's experience counts more than any credential, or in fact, we just say forget credentials. Because I've had discussions with people and they'll say, look, this is just a scam. It is a huge global scam at this point for people to waste time and money on stupid, training and certification and license and degrees and all this. And it's just a scammy thing to get money from you. And it does nothing. And we should stop the scam by stopping requiring any kind of license or certification or training or anything, and just let people who are really experienced get out there and do the best job. The problem, again, I would argue with that is, how do you know? Honestly, how do you know? How do you know when you go out to eat somewhere that the people that are working there and preparing the food have any kind of certification to run a food preparation service, and they're not monitored or licensed? So how do you know that the food's not, spoiled? How do you know? You don't know anything. So I get it that people get frustrated, and I almost always hear this obviously from somebody who's a little bit more mature in life. I don't hear 18-year-olds yelling and screaming at me, why doesn't my experience matter more? Because you just haven't been alive long enough as an adult usually to have acquired and accumulated much experience. So, you don't really have, at that point in your life, usually much of an argument one way or the other, right? You'll say, hey, I understand experience, I understand credentials, but I'm young, so I'm not, I haven't firmly planted myself in one side of this argument, one camp or the other. It's usually people who do have a lot of experience. And what tends to happen is, as time goes by, they do have a lot of knowledge, and they're really talented. And so they get mad because what they'll see is people come in who have less experience than they do, but they're paid more money than they are, and they have more responsibility. And in fact, many times if they're telling them what to do and they don't even understand, right? So that's their supervisor, and they have 20 months of experience. The other person has 20 years. So the person with 20 years of experience gets mad and says to me, this is horrible. It's a scam, right? What I say to them is okay, here's the deal. Do I believe personally that every single license and certification and all of that stuff, do I believe that all of it is absolutely, completely, perfectly designed, perfectly monitored, free of corruption? No, of course not. Every day I read in my media, my news, of some story somewhere. Somebody cheated to get a license or certification, and you see with all kind of stuff. So of course not. What I'm saying is, absent any kind of objective process, and you just sort of open it up and say everybody gets to do whatever they say that they do well, then the person who's the consumer, the person who's the patient, the person who's the client, I have literally no way to know other than people telling me, trust me. And you could say, well, then we could go on the internet. Look, hey, here's the deal. I trust comments on the internet even less than I trust, a potentially poorly run and monitored and funded credential system. Because you talk about total lack of any ability to discern who, what, when, where, why, and how. Just random stuff that people say is basically what the internet comments are. They're just random stuff people say. And if you have any, business savvy, you would just go build your own comments that say how awesome you are, or hire people to do that for very little money, and say to them, this is your job. Go on this thing and put on there how great I am. We struggle globally, right, with these issues of white collar fraud. White collar is the idea that someone's job is sort of management, right? A profession. And you get these ridiculously depressing and horrible examples where somebody, goes and says, hey, I went to this person, they said they were a medical doctor, and then they took all my money, and it turns out that they're just a liar and a criminal, and they were never any kind of doctor ever. They never even finished, high school, and they just were a criminal and a con artist, and they had identity theft and pretended to be a doctor, and they stole my money. And sometimes they say they stole my money and they operated on my loved one and they hurt them, they injured them. Sometimes they kill them. This happens all the time. So if you don't have licenses and credentials and certification, you're going to have just that free market open. Everybody gets to say what they want to say with no way for you to verify, and that will be the only option. Even with licenses, certification, and credentials, you still have people who are going to be criminals, and they're going to circumvent the system. So without it, you're going to have just immense damage done to all of us. Oh, I ate something. Oh, that was, poison, spoiled food. But there's no health inspector to come check on this. We don't have a license to operate this restaurant. What's the problem? You know what I mean? Oh my gosh, I went to the accountant for my taxes. Now the government says that I've, committed a crime and potentially going to have to go to jail for not paying my taxes. And the person says, I do taxes. I'm not saying I actually, know what I'm doing. I just put numbers down on a piece of paper. If they're right, I don't know. I mean, look at what we'd open up our system to. Even with all the credentials and licensing, you don't have, because it doesn't exist, and we talk about it all the time in our programs, you don't have perfection, but at least you have a starting point. If somebody has a credential and says, hey, I'm a licensed dentist, you know what? In many parts of the world, most parts of the world, now these things go hand in hand because you have to have the licensing body and some sort of transparency and some sort of infrastructure in terms of accountability, usually rule of law, government working. But ideally, I should be able to say, okay, I want to see the license, and I should be able to go to whatever, usually some quasi government or government place, and say, look, this person says they're Fred Smith. Here's let me put their information in. Now you can do this online. Is there a Fred Smith that's a dentist in this office location? Oh yeah, there's their license. Or even better than that, yeah, Fred Smith was a dentist, but his license was suspended because he went to prison for, hurting his dental clients. Oh, okay. Well, now I know I don't think I want to go back to Fred. That may not be the best dentist. Right? I mean, if you don't have any way to check anything, all you can do then is just, I guess, trust random people. Which the problem with that is most people, of course, are honest. Well, that's okay. So that's easy. The problem though is a lot of people who are intentionally dishonest are really, really good at it. I mentioned white collar crime a little while ago. It's, the whole idea of being a con artist, right? You're going to con someone and trick them, is that you're good at that. You sound wonderful. You say all the right things. You wear the right outfit. You acted like what people would think that someone who says they're that thing acts like. That's why you're able to do this. There are people who their entire career, it's what they do. And because they're not violent criminals, right? They don't ever, physically hurt anybody. Often we tend to not think they're as dangerous. They're incredibly dangerous. Certainly post 2008, when we started to see some of the shakeout of some of the outright fraud that happened. People who said, oh yeah, invest with me. I'm an investor. I'm going to help, make sure that your investments are, successful. And then they just stole the money. They didn't invest anything. I mean, there's so much of this stuff that goes on. And again, part of it, I think, is as a society, it seems, I think, and now part of me, is biased because I am a lawyer and I've handled these types of cases as an attorney. And of course, I'm a business professor and so I am, sort of have a predilection to feel that the damage that's caused by white collar crime is extremely serious, right? In my mind, the numbers for white collar crime, not just in my mind, but the numbers for white collar crime far outweigh the numbers for some burglar or some random person who comes and steals your car stereo or your bicycle or whatever. But of course, it's not as emotionally visceral, right? Like I went outside and someone stole my bicycle, like I'm standing there with my bicycle stolen, it hurts and I'm angry and I'm freaking out and all this kind of stuff. If someone went on, and committed white collar crime and, stole 10 times that my bicycle was worth, first of all, I might not even have noticed it for a while, right? So whatever. I mean, I think my point is this. If you don't have the credentials, then you have no way to have a functioning infrastructure of a system, because then everybody's paranoid because you can't trust everyone. Now, can you trust most people? Yes. The problem, of course, is I don't care if whatever the percentage is. Let's say it's 0.5% of people that you can't trust, okay? That group, though, can do a ton of damage. Because within the little tiny group of people that you can't trust, they will use their skills, and many of them are incredibly skilled, for bad things. And you know what? If you're the one that gets on the plane with the person who really isn't licensed, I'm thinking right now of one of the entertainers that died years ago now on a plane crash, which unfortunately, because I think, statistically it makes sense. If your job requires you to travel by plane and you often travel by small plane that has different government oversight in some situations, and it makes sense that you're going to have a higher risk of just being in an accident only because you just fly more. Now, most planes are, of course, incredibly safe, and I'm somebody who flies all the time, but I very rarely fly little, small, private planes that aren't certified the way that the major commercial airlines are for exactly these reasons. But there was an entertainer several years ago, and it turned out she was on a little plane just going to do work, short little plane ride, and the pilot allegedly, this is from memory, so I don't have all my facts exactly, but the pilot had some issues with, I think, substance abuse and training hours and all, and the records weren't exactly what they're supposed to be. And of course, the only reason I know some of this is because the plane didn't function like it's supposed to. Partially, maybe if I remember correctly, it was overloaded in terms of weight. Which, of course, if the pilot was credentialed and licensed and doing their job correctly, that wouldn't have happened, because that's part of what a pilot does. There's so much to this, right? They're not just turning on a button and then push the button and let the plane fly. No, I mean, there's a whole bunch of this. They have to understand the weight. They have to make, adjustments and allowances for the wind, for the wind speed, for all kind of stuff. I mean, it's like there's a reason why. There's so much requirement to become a licensed and highly qualified pilot, and that's why they're usually compensated very well. Large commercial airlines, all of the large shipping companies like the FedEx and the UPSs of the world pay a lot of money because these skills are hard to come by. All right, all that's to say, the performer was Aaliyah. She's a wonderful performer, just me as a fan. I really enjoyed her talent. I'm sad talking about it, but my point simply is that if you don't have any way to check and you just have to walk around in life just trusting that whoever says they're a dentist, whoever says th're a pilot, whoever says that they have a license, well, I'm sorry, wouldn't be licensed. Whoever says that hopefully that their food isn't, going to poison you, you're just at the mercy of the little teeny tiny percentage of people who are intentionally dishonest. Who are going to, they are intentionally dishonest. They're going to con and lie and steal. They're usually white collar criminals. And or what they call financial criminals, right? So they're not physically dangerous, but they're just going to use their minds and their communication skills to steal everything they can from you. Your life would be so stressful, and you would have so much harm to society. Forget the financial, but the people dying and injured. I read these stories constantly. Usually the narrative is somebody's trying to save money and or time, or they went to a licensed and credentialed medical doctor who told them they're not going to give them some surgery, or that is too dangerous or whatever. The person says to themselves, well, I don't like that answer. I'll just find somebody else to do it. Now you can find somebody else, especially if you're willing to pay money, that will do anything. There are people who, that will go out. There are people who are hit people, right? You literally pay them to go put a hit on somebody to kill them or beat them up or something. So, I mean, if you are determined, even though you've gotten medical advice that said, the surgery is a really bad idea, it's not a good idea, and then you are determined and you say, I'm going to find someone to do it anyway, or you just go on price. You say, well, the other people say it's going to be too expensive, so I'll go find somebody who says they'll do it for cheap. The reason they're going to do it for cheap is because there's something wrong. If everybody in the average in that's credentialed and licensed charges, X number of dollars, and you find somebody that will charge, half of X, why? Now, it might be that they have a very different business, or they have a high volume, and so they're able to do that. That could be, and sometimes that happens. But more often than not, they might be somebody who's not even licensed at all. Especially when you have a situation, I read these stories about somebody who's like, oh, I wanted to get surgery or something, and the medical provider who's licensed said it cost too much. So I found somebody who said that they would come to, somebody's house and do it. And it's not even a medical place. I mean, all of these are clues that you're in danger, but people do this all the time. And then they're injured, they're maimed, they're killed, right? So here's the point. Your experience without any way to verify it is not worth as much as something that's been verified. That just makes sense. Now, ideally, what my argument is, and we did a program about somebody who said they'd gone to school but they didn't finish, and in that program my advice is you got to go finish. The easy thing is to go get the credentials, because here's the sweet spot, of course, in life is credentials and experience. Somebody with credentials and experience is going to get the job versus somebody who only has credentials and no experience. So if your argument is that they hired somebody who doesn't have any experience to be your manager and you have tons of experience, my point would be if you went ahead and had the credential and your experience, then you would have gotten the job, assuming it wasn't nepotism or corruption or some other illegal thing. So why don't you just go get the credential? And then people get really frustrated, and that's when I hear people, well, it's a scam, and all they want to waste all this time and money. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. Your argument that somebody should just trust you, that you have this experience, how and why? And if I agreed with you, then I'd put my life at risk for all kinds of things. Even silly stuff. Stuff that people complain about all the time. Like, okay, a license to drive. Many parts of the world is different. So some countries and local jurisdictions, it's really difficult to get a license to drive. I mean, you have to be very skilled, and a small percentage of people actually are given the licenses that, by the government. And so you're going to have a different situation. But even if you're in a place where your argument is everybody who wants a license gets a license, that actually is not true, because even in places that are pretty easy to get a license, there are people who fail and have to go back. I got my first license to drive in the States, in the U.S., and I failed my first driver's test. So I know it happens because it happened to me. I believe, I'm doing this from memory. Yeah, it was in the state of Virginia. It was in Virginia, which is in the eastern coast of the United States. I was in Virginia, and I was trying to get my license as a teenager, and I don't remember exactly what I failed, but I think it was a parallel parking and maybe some other driving thing that I don't do well. Probably I don't parallel park well today. But the point was that even though I showed up and I passed the written test, I didn't pass the driving test, and they didn't give me my license. So it does happen because it happened to me. So I had to go learn how to parallel park. And I had to pay whatever fee to the government to take the test again. And if I remember correctly, I even took a class. I had to pay some class. I think it was in my school. But you had to go take an extra class and more time to go practice and everything and learn it. So I could sit here and scream and yell that, oh, it's such a scam. There's so many bad drivers out there. Yes, of course they're bad drivers. Many of them drive without licenses. So when they get, in accidents, they get extra, criminal charges and administrative fees for not having licenses. But if you think having no license at all is going to help, it doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. If you think it's bad now, imagine what it would be if you just took away the requirement totally. And you can, for anything you tell me, I can't disagree with you. You can say, well, there's horrible dentists today that are licensed. Yes. You can tell me, oh, I went to a medical doctor who's one of the best in the world according to their credentials and degrees and everything, and they're horrible. I am not disagreeing with you. You can say to me, well, I was on a plane one time with one of the greatest pilots in the history of the universe, and I felt uncomfortable. I didn't even think it was a good landing. Fine. I can't debate these individual events. I can't even, look, of course this thing happened. I said I read about them every day, that somebody who was credentialed and licensed did bad things. I'm saying if you take away even that little barrier to entry or something for accountability, you're going to have a complete free-for-all. Just go to parts of the world, if you haven't been there, where they don't have infrastructure that really enforces this stuff. So most places I've been, in most places in the world, there's some sort of rule or policy or law that's written down that says you're supposed to do licensing and credentialing. But in real life, they don't have the resources or the infrastructure or the cultural expectation, so nobody actually goes and checks. When you go to parts of the world like that, you'll see exactly what tends to happen. You don't have rule of law, you don't have enforcement of contracts, you don't have oversight, and you have tons of corruption coupled with that, and you get things that don't work at all. There's a fire and the sprinkler system didn't work, or there wasn't even a sprinkler system. And people, there's harm. There's economic harm, there's physical harm, there's societal harm, and there's the stress of that. The stress of being in a place where I can't rely on anything. I need I need an electrician to help me at my place. Something's happening with my electricity. I can't find somebody. I don't know if they're credentialed. I don't know if they're going to come over here and they said they're an electrician. There's no way I can check because there's no credentialing or anything that's legitimate. If there is one, it's corrupt, and everybody just pays corrupt bribery, and now they're called an electrician and they don't know what they're doing, and they came over and they destroyed all my electricity, and now I don't even have it. I mean, it's just such a high stress way of living. I talk about this in the Law Lovers Lounge. Why, when we talk about loving law, I really mean it, because the rule of law and the ability to relax and think, okay, look, stuff's going to not happen as I expect it to. That's just life. And when it does, I'll have a way to fix that or to get redress. I'm going to take them to court. That's easier and less stressful, the idea of it, than I'm going to be on my own by myself, just one-on-one, have to find them and, I don't know, beat them up or something. That's a much harder way to live because it's more difficult to get stuff done and you have no way to collectively do anything. So my argument is, for multiple reasons, I'm arguing from a policy perspective, from a business infrastructure perspective, from a governmental perspective, from an emotional health perspective, from a legal perspective. I'm arguing that, yeah, of course credentials matter. Now, the credentials should be as transparent and free of corruption as possible. Otherwise, and enforced. Otherwise, they don't mean anything. So we've done shows. We've done shows about a degree is just a piece of paper, and I argued that no, it isn't. And my point to people who say, "Hey, I'm really experienced," my point is great. That plus the credential, you're gonna really have a huge asset. But why? But the reluctance to get the credential is what I think personally I don't understand it. If you have 20 years of experience, why not go take 4 more years part time and add the credential? You've already invested all of this in this area, and you have experience. And if you like what you do, you enjoy it, right? It's giving you a little bit of that joy that we talk about in our practicing the joyful art of business concept. Then why wouldn't you just go pick up the credential? I know that you don't want to do it, but do it. That plus the experience will put you ahead of everybody else who only has the credential. So why not do this? I never understand the reluctance to do it. I really don't understand the anger. I don't know. So angry. I'm so angry. I've been doing accounting and everything, and just because I'm not a licensed accountant, I'm not a CPA, I can't get the respect I deserve. Well, here's the deal. If you actually been doing this, you probably are going to be able to move through the credentialing, licensing pretty quickly because you already know a lot of it. So why not just pick it up? I understand it's an inconvenience. I understand that it might take some time and maybe a little bit of money, but what's the alternative? That you just keep accruing more experience that will only get you to a certain level, and you're probably already maxed out. So why not just pick up the credential? And I get arguments, well, I'm too old. Okay, that logically makes literally no sense. Unless you have some sort of thing where you are guaranteed to know exactly the day that you're going to die, which no one does. Since you're alive now, why not pick up the credential? I think I mentioned this in another program. I go to graduation ceremonies, because I love them, right? But as a professor, as a faculty member, it's one of my favorite things every year, go to graduation. And just the joy and the fun and the celebration, right? It's the good stuff. And I have to say, as a student, I love graduation just because the same reason. But going to graduation, I went to graduation recently, and one of the student speakers at graduations, they'll usually have a student who's graduating give a speech, because they have other people give speeches who weren't students, so why not let a student speak as it's their day, right? It's their celebration. It's all about them. So one of the student speakers at graduation that I went to recently started off telling her story as a student that she was finishing her undergraduate degree, her bachelor's degree. And the traditional student goes to your undergraduate degree right from high school, so they usually go there between 17, 18, 19 years old. And then they finish that, whatever it is, 4 years I think is average, or 5 or something like that. And she was telling her story, and so she starts to tell her story, and she was saying that she was, at the moment that she was giving the speech, she was 70 years old, 70 years old, and was just graduating with her bachelor's degree. I said, outstanding. It was inspirational. Everybody was cheering and happy. You know why? Because her point was, hey, why not get it done? I mean, what's this imaginary time limit? You're alive. Why not go ahead and get the credential? If you start the credential and you were right that you were going to die anyway, and you die before you finish it, it wouldn't matter to begin with. But if you're wrong and you started at 70, now this lady, I said the student speaker was 70 when she finished, so we assume she, even if she had never gone to college before, she could have started somewhere around 65 or 66. But let's say you're 70 and you say to yourself, well, now it's too late. Well, that's ridiculous. People are living longer and longer. I just saw a whole great documentary recently about people over 100 years old, and all this great research about quality of life and how much fun people were having, and they were working and they were dating and there were all this exciting things, and how I've read other research shows how lifespans may be expanded really dramatically due to some of the scientific breakthroughs that are coming up. So I don't know, if you're 70 and you live to be 120, you got plenty of time. So why not go ahead and get started on your credential? I don't know, and you don't know what's going to happen. It's not going to hurt you to have the credential, license, degree, certification. It could only help. So I don't see a single reason not to get it, especially if you already have experience. If you don't get the credential and then you just sit around and complain about how horrible it is that you have all this experience and you're not paid what other people are with the credential, then your argument to me is illogical. And I don't think you want to get on that plane with no credentials and no licensing at all, and just hoping that whoever it is that's sitting there happens to actually know what they're doing. I don't think you do. I don't think you want to get about on a bus, and the person that's sitting there in front of that as the bus driver doesn't know how to drive a bus, never driven a vehicle that big, has no clue what they're doing, and also maybe is intoxicated. You don't want to get on that bus. So I mean, I don't understand the point. Why not get the license? Why not get the certification? Why not get the training? I understand it's a pain. Because if these things function, then it's a bit of a hassle. It's supposed to be. It's a barrier to entry. Not in a negative way, but in a good way. So when I was failed and told I couldn't get my driver's license, it was a barrier to entry. Yeah, it was an inconvenience. But it's something to try to make some modicum of a expectation for performance for other people on the freeway, for people who professionally are driving, for people who are driving my bus or my train or my plane, for people who said that they're a dentist, for somebody who says that they're going to cook some food that I'm going to ingest. I don't know if that stuff is poison or spoiled or whatever. So that's the whole idea of all this. And people complain all the time, but then it's like if you take that all away, then when you go to parts of the world where it's like that, it's incredibly high stress and it's difficult to get anything done. So this isn't something I totally understand, but I do see how people get in this situation. People think, okay, well, I'm going to get out there and work and do my best. And they do that, which is awesome. And they accumulate experience, which is awesome. And the problem, though, is at some level, they max out. You're not going to be able to go any higher in terms of advancement or promotion without the degree or credential. And then they get really mad and feel like here come people who have 1/20th of their experience that are being paid more money and have more responsibility, and you're telling them what to do. And they're right to be angry. My point simply is get the credential, license, or certification yourself. And if you're 18 or 80, why not go ahead now and get started? Your experience is incredibly important. All that the system is trying to ask is that we have someone to confirm that or verify it. And so maybe when you started working, you didn't have the opportunity. Maybe there wasn't an opening. Maybe there was no access to get the credential or license for you. Great. If there is today, take it. And I don't care if you don't want to, or you feel uncomfortable, or you're mad because you think you already know it all. And maybe actually you do know more than the people that are teaching the credential or the license. My point simply is go ahead and swallow your pride and go ahead and earn it. And now you have the in a system that works. Again, it's not based on just corruption and nepotism or whatever, but in the system that works based on best quality, best qualified, if you have the experience and the credential, then you're ahead of the game. You're at the front of the line. So why not just go ahead and do it? And I've tried to in this show, and I mentioned some of the other programs, bring up my point that no credentials and no transparency and no accountability and no enforcement makes it very difficult to trust anything. Is that building going to fall down on me? I don't know. Is it flame resistant? Who knows? Is that food going to poison me? I don't know. Is the water I'm about to drink, suitable for drinking? Who knows? So that's not the way that most humans choose to live. And so everywhere I've been, around the world, and I haven't been everywhere I'd like to go, but I've visited a nice number of places around the world. It works the same. Some sort of credential, some sort of license, some sort of transparency. Now, there's different issues every part of the world has, every culture has, about continuing to fight corruption, continuing to have accountability, continuing to have consistency. But that's a shared human struggle. It seems, based on sort of the aggregate shared experience as humans, that we do want to trust that I can drink this water, that I can eat that food, that I can get on that bus with that bus driver, that person at that hospital actually is licensed to treat my medical condition. I mean, and I've given my reasons of why I would think some of that is. But the frustration of, hey, I have experience and that isn't acknowledged. It's not that it's not acknowledged. What it is you need to just go ahead and take it and combine it with the credential. And I hope that at least this gave you some motivation to think about it. And I don't want to hear any excuses about age, or well, I haven't been to a class in a long time, or I'd be the oldest one, or I'd be the one who I'd know more than the teachers. And so good. I've done things like that where I know more than the people that are teaching it, and I still may get the license. So I don't care. I'm not going to deny myself a credential. It's going to potentially give me another way to learn things and potentially add to my professional skill set. I mean, that's silly. So get out there and do it. And swallow your pride and get it done. And I think then you'll have a totally different argument. Your argument will be, well, I have experience and I have a credential. And my point in the show, my argument was that credentials and licensing and all that kind of stuff in general has a positive intent. Now, of course, an application in real life, it doesn't always work like it's supposed to, but I mentioned some of the reasons why, of course, corruption, lack of transparency, these types of problems. But that doesn't mean that you're going to not arm yourself with every single advantage that you have. And since you're already ahead of the game with the experience and the expertise, why not add a little extra credential to that and get out there and then and achieve more, or achieve the same thing but do it with a sense of self value, where you feel like you are at least valued. So again, I appreciate you. Congratulations on your experience if you're one in that situation, and then let's make it happen. Let's get that whatever extra credential that we need to add to our experience to give us the most possible advantage that we can have. Do it and swallow your pride and get it done. And if you don't get it done the first time, then you go back and you do it again. Just like I didn't quit with my quest to get a driver's license because I failed the first time. I just did it again. I mean, I went back and had more training and more more hours and all this kind of stuff, and I practiced and everything. And then I went back and eventually I did get it. So there you go. If you have the decision and the determination, you will achieve it. It may take extra work. You may need sometimes you need remedial help. Sometimes you need tutoring. Sometimes you need extra practice. I don't care what it is, but you can and you will do this. I've done stuff all the time that it's very hard for me, or maybe I didn't do it the first time. I don't quit. And neither do you. So again, come by CourtneyAnderson.com. Share with me any feedback, ideas, suggestions. Make sure to leave your ratings or reviews on any of our distribution channels around the world, like iTunes or Spreaker or Stitcher or anywhere else. And support our show sponsors on those show pages. And speak out and let me know what's on your mind. Thank you.